By the way, Olivia, what happened to the $500,000 I gave you as a gift? Thanksgiving dinner. In a room filled with the warm scents of turkey and pumpkin spice, a quiet question from my grandfather Jacob, the head of the Morgan family, instantly froze the atmosphere in the luxurious dining room that had been full of cheerful laughter until moments ago. All conversations among the relatives stopped, and even the clinking of cutlery vanished. In a silence so still it felt as if time had stopped, every gaze stabbed into me. Olivia. I had thought I had prepared perfectly for this day. Using every bit of my skills as a data scientist, I had gathered irrefutable evidence that my sister Riley had withdrawn the $500,000 from our joint account. Everything. The IP address logs showing access to my account from her boyfriend's apartment. The contract for a bright red Porsche that was purchased almost simultaneously with the transfer. I had simply been waiting for the right moment to bring down the curtain on this grotesque little farce. But the words, "the gift I gave you before my death," from my grandfather's mouth were something I had never anticipated. A gift of $500,000? Grandpa had given it to me? In that moment, the final and most crucial piece of the puzzle clicked into place inside my mind with an icy sound. I had assumed Riley had stolen money she had obtained from somewhere else, using my account merely as a conduit. But I was wrong. That money had been a warm investment in my future, given to me by my grandfather. Riley had not merely stolen money. She had stolen my grandfather's kindness and love before I even knew about it, and trampled on it for her own vanity. The instant I understood this truth, the calculated anger I had felt transformed into something far hotter, an uncontrollable surge of fury rising from the depths of my chest. It felt as though my blood was flowing backward. I slowly shifted my gaze to my family seated nearby. Riley's face had gone pale. My parents, Aaron and Julia, were desperately avoiding my eyes. They had known everything. They knew exactly how my grandfather's generosity had been used. On this day meant for gratitude, I had learned the unbearably ugly secret of my family. Suppressing the tremor in my voice, I turned back to my grandfather and quietly, yet clearly asked, "Grandpa, may I hear a little more about that story?" Those words were the signal that marked the beginning of a very long night. And the beginning of all this was a single phone call that came just 1 week before this family reunion. 1 week earlier, I was in my room in Seattle, completely absorbed in building a complex data model. The deadline for submitting it to the client was approaching, and the countless numbers and graphs displayed on my monitor were the entirety of my world. Outside the window, the Space Needle was wet with cold rain. It had been 5 years since I came to this city, and I had built my career relying on no one but myself and my own skills. It was lonely, but that loneliness was also proof of a freedom where no one could control me. And to me, it was a comfortable silence. At that moment, Riley's name appeared on the screen of my smartphone. She rarely called for personal reasons, and if anything, she acted as though she preferred to avoid me. So I felt a faint sense of unease as I answered. "Hello, Olivia? Hey, I just wanted to tell you something." Riley's voice over the phone was strangely gentle and carried a cautious tone. It was as if she were handling something fragile, or whispering so as to not wake a sleeping beast. It was an unnatural voice. "About Thanksgiving this weekend, Grandpa hasn't been feeling very well lately, so it might end up being canceled." I frowned. Grandpa wasn't feeling well? Just last week when we talked, he had told me in an unusually lively voice that he was busy taking care of his garden. It was a strong, vibrant voice that didn't sound like that of an 80-year-old. "Canceled? Really? Did you hear anything from him directly?" "No, not directly, but, Mom said so. She said he gets tired easily these days. So I thought maybe you don't have to push yourself to come home this time. It's far from Seattle, and you're busy with work, right?" Her words only deepened my sense of unease. Riley had never shown concern for my work, not even once. To her, my job as a data scientist had always been nothing more than some gloomy, complicated job that makes money. Yet she was using my workload as a reason to discourage me from coming home. It sounded like a strange kind of deterrence disguised as concern. It was as if my presence at the Thanksgiving dinner table was something she absolutely needed to prevent. "I see. All right, thanks for letting me know. Please tell Grandpa I hope he feels better soon." I gave a neutral response and hung up the phone, but the suspicion inside me began to spread slowly, like dark ink. Riley was lying, and she was hiding something. But what exactly? Was there something inconvenient for her if I joined the family gathering? The numbers lined up on my monitor no longer registered in my mind. My job is to find anomalies hidden in data, but I was detecting dangerous signals within the closest data set of all, my family. Quietly, I picked up the receiver and dialed my grandfather's home number. Before the phone rang twice, a familiar, cheerful voice came through the line. "Oh, Olivia. A call from my adorable little genius. How delightful." My grandfather had always affectionately called me that because of my work as a data scientist. There was not even the slightest hint of illness in his voice. "Grandpa, Riley told me you weren't feeling well. Are you okay?" He burst into hearty laughter, as if he found the idea utterly ridiculous. "Not feeling well? Who said that?" "Ha ha ha. I was out there battling the oak tree in the yard this morning, and I came out victorious. More importantly, aren't you the one working too hard? This year's Thanksgiving, I'll have plenty of my special gravy sauce ready and waiting. I still remember when you were little and said, 'Grandpa's sauce tastes like magic,' then soaked your bread in it until it turned completely soggy." His warm words softened my heart. Between him and me, there was always an honest, gentle flow of time. But that very warmth only made Riley's lies seem even colder. She had used this loving grandfather as an excuse to lie to me. "Why?" After I hung up, driven by a surge of suspicion and unease, I logged into the joint account I shared with my grandfather, which I had not used in years. He had created it so he could easily manage my tuition payments when I went off to college. And after graduating, I had forgotten it even existed. It took me some time to remember the password, but after a few attempts, the digital door finally opened. And when I saw the numbers displayed there, I froze. My eyes were locked onto the most recent page of the transaction history. Withdrawal, $500,000. It was an amount so unreal that my brain refused to process it. My heart began pounding, and I felt the tips of my fingers grow cold. It had to be a mistake, a bank system error, or perhaps hacking by some unknown party. At that point, I still desperately wanted to believe that my family could not possibly be involved in this crime. But my professional knowledge shattered that comforting wishful thinking. As a data scientist, I began a full-scale pursuit, using open-source intelligence techniques to uncover the truth hidden in this digital darkness. After identifying Riley's boyfriend's apartment from the IP address, I thoroughly analyzed her Instagram. What I found there was a castle made of vanity, built with the money stolen from my account. Mykonos in Greece, a 7-star hotel in Dubai, first-class airline seats. And the final blow, a post from just a few weeks earlier. Alongside the caption, "My dream finally came true. My new baby," was a photo of a bright red Porsche 911 Cabriolet. I suddenly remembered the large-scale customer data leak from that car dealership reported in the news. With my skill set, locating the leaked digital copy of the purchase contract bearing my sister's name from scattered fragments floating around the internet was not particularly difficult. The down payment and the monthly loan. The source of the payments, needless to say, was my account. I then cross-referenced public corporate registry databases with bank transaction records. As expected, the day after the large withdrawal was made from my account, a new company had been registered under that man's name. The registered address was an empty rental office. Its business description was vague, an obvious shell company. He had used Riley's vanity, climbed on her shoulders, and devoured my grandfather's kindness. Hermes Birkin bags, Cartier jewelry, luxury cars, and a river of money flowing into the hands of a con artist. After gathering all the digital evidence, I began preparing to travel home for Thanksgiving. It was almost certain that Riley had been illegally using my account to fund her extravagant lifestyle, but I still didn't know where the original money had come from, nor how deeply my parents were involved. At that moment, my mother called. "Listen, Olivia, please try not to talk too much about money at Thanksgiving, all right? Riley is going through a difficult time right now. It seems she's struggling a bit financially because of the new business she and her boyfriend are starting." A cold shiver ran down my spine. Struggling financially? My sister, who had been burning through money like water? My mother was clearly hiding something. She was helping cover Riley's lies. I deliberately pretended to know nothing as I answered. "Really? That sounds tough. All right, I'll be careful." After hanging up, I was certain. This was not Riley acting alone. My mother, and likely my father as well, were complicit in this ugly crime. The entire family was hiding something from me. Not a single tear fell. I simply felt something deep inside me quietly and was completely burned out. I checked my folder one last time and I boarded the plane heading back to my hometown. I was prepared to deliver their verdict on Thanksgiving night. I had compiled all the evidence into one folder. By this point, all sadness had vanished from my heart, leaving only a silent, icy rage burning fiercely. Grandpa's words echoed through the room like a discordant note tearing through a perfectly tuned orchestral performance. All conversation stopped, and every gaze was fixed on me. And within those words was the truth I had never known. A gift. Riley was not merely a thief. She was a vile traitor who had trampled on my grandfather's love. Feeling the hot anger rising from the depths of my chest, I still maintained a calm tone as I asked my grandfather, "Grandpa, could you tell me a little more about that?" Unaware of everything, he smiled warmly and began to explain. "Oh, yes. I heard you were achieving wonderful results at your company. I wanted to give you a small celebration gift and an investment in your future. A few months ago, I deposited it into that joint account of ours. I thought it might help you start something new someday." The moment he said those words, I sensed Riley, sitting beside me, gasp for breath. Her face was twisted in pure terror. My parents were frozen like stone. Grandpa, unaware of the strange tension in the family, continued speaking. "I heard from your mother that you were already putting that money to good use as funds to start a new business. I'm glad to hear that." At that moment, I glared at my mother. She flinched violently and tried to escape my gaze. What a horrifying lie. To conceal Riley's crime, she had even lied to Grandpa and used me as a convenient excuse. I quietly placed my napkin on the table and slowly stood up. Then, with the attention of the entire room on me, I spoke in a calm, unwavering voice. "Grandpa, thank you. However, I'm afraid there are several parts of that story that do not match the truth. And unfortunately, it is also true that the money was used not for business, but for a completely different purpose." As I said this, I picked up my smartphone and connected it to the portable projector. What was about to begin was not a trial. It was something much more one-sided and far more brutal, an execution of judgment. The white wall became illuminated with the projection of my phone's screen. The first thing displayed was the transaction history of the problematic joint account. The bright red digits showing $500,000 caused the relatives who didn't know anything to begin murmuring in confusion. "First, please look here. This is the record of the transfer Grandpa mentioned. $500,000 were withdrawn from my account. However, I was not the one who did this." "That must be some kind of mistake," Riley shrieked. "I don't know anything about that. Someone must have hacked into your account." "Hacked, you say? Then tell me, are you familiar with this IP address?" I then projected the IP address analysis log. When the transfer was made, this was the IP address that accessed the account. "Do you recognize where this address belongs, Riley? It is the luxury apartment where you currently live with your boyfriend." "That's because he said he was helping manage your account." "Yes, that's right. He knows a lot about IT, so he said he was helping take care of your money." "My account? Managed by a man I have never once met?" "That's an amusing joke. Then tell me, was this also a gift from him?" Next, I projected a collage of Riley's Instagram posts alongside credit card statements. Mykonos in Greece, a 7-star hotel in Dubai, Hermes Birkin bags. Yes, all of that was a gift from him. It has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with me. Because all of those payments were made using this forged card, the one you created in my name without my permission. The damning photos of extravagant purchases and the countless payment records filled the wall. Each one exposed Riley's lies under the harshest possible light. The dining room fell as silent as a grave, broken only by the eerie whispers of the stunned relatives. "Hey, did you see that? That Birkin is the one she was bragging about at the party." So then, all of that was a lie, wasn't it? That whisper must have been like a knife twisting into Riley's heart. She could no longer lift her head and covered her face with both hands. And now, the final piece. I projected the purchase contract for the bright red Porsche 911 Cabriolet. There, Riley's trembling signature was clearly visible, along with the record showing the down payment withdrawn from my account. No, this is this is an investment. When his business succeeds, it will double and come back to me. That business of his, is it this shell company? I displayed, one after another, the photo of the empty rental office where the scammer's company was registered, along with news articles about his previous fraud accusations. Riley's face rapidly turned the color of utter despair. Uncle Robert, seated among the relatives, spat out his disgust. What a foolish woman, to be tricked by such a man. A disgrace to the family. As if his words had opened a floodgate, the other relatives began casting cold, contemptuous looks toward Riley and my parents. No one offered sympathy. No one defended them. They were simply watching, evaluating us like tainted goods or staring from afar as if looking at something vile. Olivia, please stop this. My mother, who had been silent until now, finally let out a shrill cry. She's your sister. How can you do something so cruel, humiliating her in front of everyone like this? At those words, I slowly turned to face her. Cruel? Which of us has done something cruel? You knew everything. You lied to both Grandpa and me to cover up Riley's crime. Just a few days ago on the phone, you said this. Riley is struggling financially. You knew exactly where that money came from. No, I just felt sorry for her. She's not like you. Things don't always go well for her. Cornered, my mother cried out through tears. And at that moment, she carelessly let slip the one thing she should never have said. You're successful and not hurting for money. If you hadn't noticed, no one would have been hurt. The instant those words left her mouth, the atmosphere in the dining room froze solid. It was her true feelings laid bare. Her dependence on me, her contempt for me, and her ugly jealousy twisted together. I felt something beyond anger, almost amusement bubbling up. If I hadn't noticed, no one would have been hurt. What did you just say? My mother covered her mouth with her hand. But it was already far too late. The contemptuous gazes of the relatives all turned sharply toward my mother at once. I delivered my declaration, cold and unmistakably clear. My hard work, my success. You look down on all of it like this. Everything I built through my own sweat and effort was nothing more than a convenient wallet to you. Something to fuel Riley's vanity. Now I understand things perfectly. During all of this, my father simply bit his lip and stared at a single spot on the table. His silence spoke more loudly of his guilt than any confession could. Then it happened. Grandpa, who had been watching everything with his arms crossed and a stern expression, finally spoke in a voice that echoed like rolling thunder. Riley, you stole the kindness I entrusted to Olivia for the sake of your own vanity. I'm sorry. And Aaron, Julia, you deceived me as well. I did not raise you to be this way. Family does not lie. Family does not steal. Never. Grandpa shouted this and then pulled out his smartphone with trembling fingers. And as everyone in the room held their breath, he tapped 3 numbers. Hello, police? Yes, I'd like to report a case involving fraud and theft. The perpetrator is my granddaughter. The moment Grandpa quietly yet resolutely said, "The perpetrator is my granddaughter," Julia let out a piercing scream. Dad, please no. Are you going to turn her into a criminal? My mother nearly fell out of her chair as she rushed to his feet, clinging desperately to his pant leg. My father stood up in a panic as well and started apologizing desperately. Please, anything but the police. We will repay every cent, I swear. We will supervise her. This will never happen again. But Grandpa's resolve was immovable, like stone. Silence. This is no longer about money. This is about the honor and trust of our family. And the ones who shattered it were you yourselves. Grandpa continued speaking calmly to the police officer on the other end of the line. A composed male voice could be heard from the phone. Understood. However, since this is a financial dispute within a family, it is typical to first consider resolving it through civil procedures. Of course, if you believe fraud or theft is involved, you may file an official report and we will begin an investigation. I see. Then I will come by tomorrow. Yes, please bring all relevant evidence with you at that time. Thank you. After the call ended, only a suffocating silence remained in the dining room. Riley stared at the scene with empty eyes, devoid of any emotion. She had already heard through the whispers of the relatives that her boyfriend had been nothing more than a fake rich man. But the reality before her was far heavier than that. The next day, when Grandpa would go to the police station, everything would become an official record. There was no escape left for her. My father watched the scene helplessly, then finally asked Grandpa in a trembling voice, "Dad, was this really the right thing to do?" Grandpa cast a single cold glance at his son and replied as if spitting the words out, "You should have stopped this before it happened. All of this is nothing more than the consequence of your own actions." The glittering light of the chandelier shone coldly on Riley's pale face. The relatives standing by the walls had been watching from a distance, with expressions full of curiosity, and I could hear their whispers drifting toward me. "The Morgan family is finished now." "He's going to the police tomorrow." "How disgraceful." "It's their own fault. That's what happens when you raise a child to be so vain." Those cold, cruel words pierced mercilessly into the backs of my mother crying on the floor and my father standing frozen in shock. And then, as if they had all agreed beforehand, the relatives began preparing to leave. "Thank you for the meal. Sorry to leave in the midst of the trouble." Leaving only those empty phrases behind, one by one they fled the house as if escaping a plague. The dining room that had been so lively moments earlier emptied in an instant, and only the untouched leftovers remained, silently telling the story of the tragedy that had unfolded. Only a dead, suffocating silence remained in the house. My mother collapsed on the floor, sobbing, and my father slumped on the sofa as if his soul had left his body. And Riley sat weakly in her chair, staring vacantly at a single spot on the table. That night, she picked up her phone many times, but she never found the courage to call her boyfriend. Somewhere deep inside, she instinctively understood that everything was already over. A few days later, Grandpa visited the police station, taking me with him. We brought all the evidence we had prepared: the IP address analysis logs, the bank transaction records, screenshots of the Instagram posts, the Porsche purchase contract, and the registration information of the shell company created by the con artist. The detective who greeted us was a calm, middle-aged man. He listened carefully to our explanation and examined each piece of evidence. "I see. This certainly cannot be dismissed as a simple family dispute. There may be organized fraud involved." He nodded gravely and took out the official forms for filing a criminal complaint. "Then we will accept the report. We will begin a full investigation from here. However, please understand that questioning the involved parties and conducting background checks may take some time." "I understand. Please proceed," Grandpa answered quietly but with firm resolve. When we stepped out of the police station, the cold winter wind brushed against our cheeks. Grandpa gazed into the distance and murmured softly, "Was this truly the right thing to do, Olivia?" "You did nothing wrong, Grandpa. The wrongdoers are the ones who used another person's kindness for their own greed." "I see. You are a strong child." Over the next several days, a heavy silence hung over the Morgan family. My mother shut herself in her room. My father went to work in silence every day, and Riley refused to come out of her bedroom. And 1 week after Thanksgiving, a call came from the police. "We would like Riley to voluntarily come to the station for questioning." The moment she heard those words, all color drained from Riley's face. With trembling hands, she put on her coat and, accompanied by my mother, headed to the police station. In the cold, sterile environment of the interrogation room, she was questioned for hours. There, she was confronted with the undeniable evidence I had prepared. In the end, Riley admitted to all her crimes. There was no longer any room for excuses. What followed progressed with bureaucratic precision and merciless efficiency. After being released on bail, Riley made one desperate attempt to call her boyfriend, her last hope. But the voice that came through the receiver was not the sweet whisper she once knew. It was the icy, unfamiliar voice of a man she barely recognized anymore. "Hello? Riley, I saw the news. Tough luck. Please, help me. I don't know what to do." "Help you? Me? Why? Ever heard the saying, 'When the money's gone, the bond is gone'? You're nothing but a walking curse now. Don't call me again. With that, the call ended without a shred of mercy. In that moment, Riley finally understood, down to the marrow of her bones, that she had been nothing more than a convenient source of money, a pitiful clown in someone else's game. She collapsed on the spot and cried like a helpless child. The castle of vanity she had built crumbled, and her heart shattered with it. Although Riley avoided prison time through a plea deal, the court ordered her to repay the full $500,000, a practical life sentence. The family sold the home where they had lived for many years, filled with countless memories. The garden my mother had lovingly tended, the study where my father spent his weekends. Everything passed into the hands of strangers. And then they moved, as if fleeing in the night, to a shabby, thin-walled apartment on the outskirts of town. I occasionally heard about their later life from my aunt. Riley is working as a waitress at a local diner. She can't even get her nails done anymore, and she always looks lifeless while cleaning up customers' leftovers. Aaron has completely lost his spirit and spends all day drinking cheap liquor in front of the TV. Julia's part-time wages are barely keeping the household afloat. That perfectionist woman now fights over discounted prepared meals at the grocery store. They barely speak to each other. The house is filled with heavy silence and the feeling that everyone is blaming everyone else. Hearing that story stirred no emotion in me. It was simply the inevitable consequence of the path they had chosen. In contrast to their decline, my life had begun to fill with new light. A few months after Thanksgiving, Grandpa called me to his lawyer's office and told me he had rewritten his entire will. This is not compensation. It is my will. I want to entrust everything to the one I can truly rely on. You. Those words carried a weight that resonated deeply within me. With the funds Grandpa gifted me recently, I invested in a cutting-edge AI startup where I could make full use of my expertise. My prediction was correct. The company grew at lightning speed and became one the world watched closely. I achieved new success by my own strength. Sometimes, Grandpa casually visits my office with a cup of coffee in hand and, just like in the old days, smiles as he says, "You are my pride and joy, Olivia." On that Thanksgiving day, I lost my biological family. But in exchange, I gained true independence and an unshakable bond.